Happy Friday, everybody. Josh here with On the Wrong Lead. Another episode of You've Gotta Be Shot Tinning Me. I am joined, as always, by Mr. Matt Carlson. Matt, how you doing, my friend?
Doing okay. My brackets, I think, are already dead, so I'm back to
Oh,
Hong Kong, which is good. Don't want to get distracted by anything other than racing. So stick to what you know. That's apparently just one thing and nothing else.
yeah, I got some work to do tomorrow. I'm going on since sports betting's been legal in Illinois. I forget if it's 2 years or 3 years. I've hit a opening weekend parlay for a couple $100 each year, and basically have been able to withdraw money and have enough money to play for the rest of the tournament. Now, obviously, that streak is going to come to an end at some point, but I was hoping maybe it was going to be this year. So we're gonna go at it again tomorrow. I'm only down a little bit. I'm not down a ton. I think a little unlucky with maybe some of the way I bet some of this stuff because I had a couple underdogs that ended up winning. Unfortunately, I keyed most of my day through Louisville, and that hurt me a lot. But we move on tomorrow. And tomorrow I have a nice long drive ahead of me. I'll be heading down to Louisville. So we're recording this on Thursday night, so Friday morning. When you're probably listening to this, I'll probably be in the car on the way to Louisville. Have a couple of bourbon tastings and bourbon tours lined up. We got a haunted walking tour lined up.
Okay.
Got dinner at a nice place, and yeah, we're just gonna enjoy our 10-year anniversary and just kind of have a nice relaxing weekend out of town. So looking forward to that. Looking forward to coming back with a lot of bourbon, and yeah, I'm still actually finishing up my stream bourbon here. I still have a little bit left. So, but yeah, this the Hong Kong Derby card. Obviously not part of the late pick three, but you know, we'd be remiss if we didn't talk obviously about the Hong Kong Derby. And normally we start off with the late pick three, but I figure, hey, this is the kind of the lead. This is the feature race of the card. We'll lead off with it. We'll start with the Hong Kong Derby. Going to be going 2,000 meters here for 4 year olds. And yeah, everyone carries the same weight here. Colts and Geldings 126 pounds. Fillies would carry 122, although it's very rare that a filly ever runs here in Hong Kong. So
I don't
everyone's
think
going to
there's
be.
any left. I think there was one who I was actually a huge fan of, and I forget the name of that filly. But yeah, I think they're all gone at this point.
Yeah,
So
occasionally one will ship in,
yeah,
right? But
yep.
I think for this race, it's
Haven't
going to
seen
be
one in
young
a long time.
horses. Yeah.
So
But obviously you're I don't know. I'm guessing that Ruby Lot's going to be your favorite in this race. I don't know. Do we have any kind of early odds on this yet, or?
I haven't seen them on Thursday. I think it's a little too early. Let me check if they've posted since then. But I think they generally post on Friday because
Okay.
I don't think the weights are out yet for the horses, and that's generally
Hmm.
when they post them. But I think you have a pretty safe assumption that Ruby Lot will be, if not favored, at least very close. So
Yeah, I mean, I honestly I don't think I'm going to be super out there on this race. I there's two horses I like. I like Ruby Lot. And you know, is a horse that seems to have just gotten better with distance. Won pretty impressively. I thought last time out. Didn't have the cleanest of trips, but still was able to get out and win. Um, the race two back, kind of was. I don't really know what happened. The horses kind of didn't seem to have its best, and looked like the horses maybe saved a little bit at the end. But you kind of cross the line through that race two back, and this is a horse that's finished second, first, and first, in three of the last four starts. So coming in with great form. and is stretching out here another 200 meters, like a lot of these horses. So, yeah, I thought, Ruby Lot obviously makes a ton of sense in here, is drawn well. And yeah, just really hasn't done anything wrong the last four starts. But I guess the other horse that I'm interested in is the five bundle award. Um, and this is a horse that, kind of similar to, I think, Ruby Lot, won at 1400, and then they kind of started stretching this horse out a little bit. And I think that that last race was a pretty impressive win, won by, over an open length. And when I'm looking at this race and I'm looking at some of these horses and their kind of their closing speed, if you will, I really think that there's like it's the five and the one, and everybody else is kind of, I don't think anybody else can really has that same closing kick like these two. And I think sometimes I mean, we get these sprinters, obviously is the main focus here at Hong Kong. But sometimes you get these horses, that maybe were bred for the sprinting, but uh, are able to keep that distance and still kind of keep that kick. And I think that's definitely the case for Bundle Award. If you kind of look at his progression as he stretched out, like he hasn't really lost a step in that last fraction closing. So I really like the five Bundle Award. I kind of was a little curious about the seven, but I think last time out I was a little interested because Ryan Moore got aboard and then he ran dead last. So I don't really know if I mean I guess I don't know why it would be different here, but I don't know. The fact that Ryan Moore stays aboard, it's the horse that's getting a little bit of distance, it's the horse that's run at this distance before, which is not something that a lot of these other horses can really say. Maybe the eight Noisy Boy, has a win at this distance, but um, yeah, I'm gonna stick with the one and the five, Ruby Lot and Bundle Award. Where did you kind of land, Matt?
Yeah, I guess a few different things to say about this before I talk about who I ended up picking. One, first and foremost, you mentioned the seven. I hate Mickley as a horse. I've made a lot of money fading Mickley. That horse seems to take a ton of money. I hope he takes a ton of money here because I really don't like that horse. Someday that horse will beat me. I guarantee you. Like I will get burned at some point on that horse winning a race. I hope it's not this race, but for I think six consecutive races, I've made a fair amount of money. Just fading that horse. I don't know why people continue to bet that. It's had some troubles with draws and things like that, but I don't know, just one of those horses that I've never seen the case for. So if Mickley wins, I'll gladly lose here. The other piece I want to talk about, obviously, I think the last time Ruby Lot ran, Ruby Lot was one of my top picks. I think I had a very positive day picking Ruby Lot. I believe he went off around 8 or 9 to 1 that day, and I had a very sizable win bet on that horse. So I like Ruby Lot as a horse. I think, would not be surprised if he wins this race. I think is one of the, you know, two or three most talented horses in this field. And again, it would not surprise me to see this horse take this out. That said, the Hong Kong Derby is very similar to the Kentucky Derby in that you will have a lot of horses that have never actually run the distance before. And so there's a lot of unknowns. And I'm always hesitant to try and take a favorite in a race like this because you're dealing with younger horses who have never actually tried the distance that they're asked to get right now. And so Ruby Lot has a ton of chance to win in this race. But as the favorite, I don't know that I want to take the price that you'll likely get on that horse, just given, kind of all the factors involved. So, given it's not connected to anything, right? Given that this isn't part of a pick three, I'm not trying to tie this to any other value. Just if you're going to, have this horse on a win line, to me, I think I'd rather fade it for a different horse. And all that said, the horse that I faded him for, was the 3 Johannes Brahms. Now, if you look at the last race, if you watch the replays, Rubilot and Johannes Brahms were definitely in that same race. They had that shared field. Rubilot gets an absolute masterful ride from Breton Abdullah. He is able to navigate down to the rail. He is able to kick out wide. He's able to get first run. And really, I think that the ride itself is what wins that race for Rubilot. I mean, it's a dream trip, and he kind of gets the jump on Johannes Brahms in the stretch. Meanwhile, if you look at Johannes Brahms, you'll see he's kind of checked back the whole way by Karis Teton, who is not riding this horse. It just kind of never settles. Karis has the horse kind of by the range, trying to pull him back and not rush up. He kind of traps him too wide because of that. When he gets into the stretch, he gets him behind a wall of horses, and by the time he kicks out, he just doesn't have enough time to, kind of get home and win that race. And so, I think with a better trip, Johannes Brahms might just be the more talented horse in this case. And if I get a horse that I think is either just as or more talented than Ruby Lot and can potentially get a better trip than last time, that's where I want to put my money. So my lone A in here, or my win bet in here, will be on the 3 Johannes Brahms. It's with my favorite jockey, Andrea Atzeni.
I was gonna
But
say.
he actually, if you look at statistics, he's run 17 races at 2000. He's hit the board 7 times out of those 17. Now, granted, that's probably skewed by being on some horse that is a 2000-meter specialist, but hey, in here, he's actually shown that he's a better jockey at 2000 meters than he is at most average distances. So I think that may be a net positive mood. Karis Teton has not had the season that you'd expect him to have, right? I think he was assumed to be the de facto beneficiary of Zach Burton going out. And that beneficiary really has been Breton Abdullah and not Karis Teton. He has kind of been a middle of the pack jockey here. So I do think Etseni getting back up is a overall net positive for this horse. Etseni actually has at least a win on this horse, if not a couple, just one. But yeah, I think, Johannes Brahms might actually be a little bit of a price in here, and you'll get, kind of odds on that. The only other horse that I looked at in here is a horse that's drawn terribly. Actually couldn't be drawn worse, and it's the 2 My Wish, drawn all the way out in 14. And at 2000 meters, being drawn in 14 is probably a death sentence, right? I mean, if there's a reason not to bet this horse, that's it. But I will say, if you look at the pace scenario of this race, there's not a ton of speed in here. And so I don't know that Luke Ferraris can clear to get a lead from the 14 post with a very short run up to the turn at 2000 meters. But if any scenario is going to set up that way, it might be this one. And so there is a potential that he can actually clear and get around. And if that happens, maybe you get a much better price, because I do feel like people do factor in draw a ton when it comes to these races. And maybe this just maps out a little bit better than you would ever get from a 14 post. I do think the horse is improving. I do think the figs are, probably up there with any other horse in this field. And look, I mean, the horse has missed the Quinella once, and it was or missed a board once, and it was in the first race it's ever ran. So, I mean, there's a lot here. I think, I'm interested to see what price you get on this horse, but maybe, right? If you get the right value, I think there's potentially a play on My Wish, especially given the draw. I think people are going to kind of shy away from it. And, yeah, draw is bad, but you want to also look for overcorrections, right? You want to look for where, people fade too much and you end up getting a better price. So most of my money will be through Johannes Brahms. I do think if you're, trying to string something together, Ruby Lot is definitely a use, but just to me, not on the win line. And I think potentially My Wish, if you get, you probably need at least 10 or 15 to 1 to me, given the draw and the post. But if you get that, maybe. So those will kind of be my plays here.
Where are we at with beer bets?
I think we're 1-1 right now, so we can
Yeah,
have another one.
I'll head up you the 5 versus your 3.
Okay, we'll do that.
All right. Well, we'll have to mark it. Cool. Let's move on to the late pick 3 then here. Our bread and butter. And obviously it starts in race 8, 1200 meters, the Furo handicap, Furore, whatever. And yeah, as usual, we have a nice full field here. We got 13 horses. Um, I'll let you go first. Where did you land here?
I thought this race was probably pretty straightforward. I think my lone A will be through the 3 Master of My Universe. I do think this horse is drawn poorly, but realistically, this horse's best race is probably just a lot better than anyone else in this field. I do think this horse will be short, but I think it's just good enough regardless of the draw you get. Keep in mind they are on the A course, so being drawn wide is not as bad as it would be if the rails were a little bit further out. Um, you get the best jock on in Ryan Moore. I think this horse would have to run a really bad effort to lose this race. And so to me, everything's going to go through that in this race. I realistically think that it probably could be a single. The only other horse that I'll play in here, just from a potential odds perspective, is the 8 Crimson Flash. I think that's just one of those things where I see a horse that on my figs has been improving, has kind of hit in its fourth start, and I think those are always horses again that I will want to play. I do think in here, given a lot of the speed it's signed on, that it'll have to learn how to pass a horse. You kind of see those last 2 races. I guess the last one at 1200, right? It was pretty forward and kind of faded out. It did stay on pretty well, but I am concerned that this race has a fair bit of speed signed on, and I don't think this horse is going to be a on the lead. So I do have concerns whether this horse can actually pass somebody in the stretch, which I think it'll need to, but maybe, right? I think you'll get a decent enough price on this where maybe you could argue using it as a B, but most of my money will be through the 3 Master of My Universe, which I do think is a pretty chalky play.
Yeah, I saw it the same way with the 3 Master of My Universe. I think horse to beat in here. I was a little concerned about the post, but this is one that has one from a wide post. Granted, it was a different course, but has run fine from those wide posts. And I think Ryan Moore should be able to work out a trip still. So yeah, hard to leave the 3 out. Um, the only other horse I was interested in was the 4 Pakistan Legacy. Um, I thought the obviously the debut was really good. Obviously Zach was aboard. Finished second by a half length. Kind of ran even that race. Um, then Luke Ferraris gets the mount and just, I mean, I don't know what he did, but maybe did Luke Ferraris things. And the horse kind of, he got the lead and then just kind of faded that last 100 meters. So you get Morera aboard here. He's off to a slow start. Obviously, in his minimal races here, he's only 1 for 14. But um, I think a slightly better jock than Luke Ferraris is a horse that's dropping 4 pounds. And I think if it can run back to what it did in its debut, it's drawn a little bit better. I thought Pakistan Legacy made a bit of sense. We'll see what kind of price we get. Obviously, we was the favorite first time out, was 14 to 1 last time. My guess is you get somewhere in between there. My guess is you get, I don't know, maybe like a 6 to 1 or something on this horse. But I think that's probably fair. A 6 to 1 or so on this 4 Pakistan Legacy. But yeah, I'm gonna use the 3 and the 4. Those are my A's. I did have a lone B, and that's the 11 ballistic win. Um, and it's just one coming, you know, uh, coming up in class. Is a horse that kind of, they stretch this horse out a bit, um, and I don't really know why, because if you look at this horse's record, 1200 meters at Sha Tin, this horse has got a win, a second, and 2/4 in 4 starts. So why they decided to stretch this horse out, I don't know. Maybe they just wanted to keep this horse in class 4, and they were like running it too far. I don't know. I really don't know what they were doing with this horse because it clearly seems to be a horse that wants to run this distance. So, um, you know,
Yeah,
go ahead.
just a comment on that, right? I think if you ever see a 4-year-old horse that they try and stretch out, it's probably very similar to what they do in the US, which is you get the owners that have Derby fever, right? You see, hey, we want to see if this horse can go 2000 and get into the Derby. And most owners will do that. And then they very quickly realize this horse doesn't want to do that at all. So it's not atypical to see a horse kind of try and stretch out and, get those distances and then realize, hey, never mind.
Yeah, but he's gonna stay at this at the 1200 meters and gets the rail. Obviously this is the horse that wants to come from off the pace, so um, maybe there's a chance he kind of gets stuck on the rail. I'm not really sure, but I don't know. I'd like the 11 ballistic win here. I mean, one with Blake Shin aboard, so I mean, I think that should tell you a lot about this horse. But yeah, not that that Thompson's all that much better, but um, yeah, I don't know. I thought this horse was interesting here. Is going to be carrying the weight 117 pounds. Um, we'll see what price we get because this is a horse that's been bet down a lot, but now coming up in class, and not exactly having a very exciting jockey aboard. Maybe we still keep a price, but we'll see. But I have the 11 as a B.
I think Ben Thompson will keep your price pretty high. So
um, all right, race 9, the Werther Handicap, another 1200-meter race, and I thought this one was pretty straightforward. I think Invincible Shield is lone A for me. I think he gets Ryan Moore, and yeah, I mean, I know he's going to be the high weight, but I think that last race was very, very good. A lightly raced horse. And I always like to see these lightly raced horses that have a win going up against some more seasoned horses. Um, the other two horses I'm using, the four Magnifique maybe goes off as your favorite in this race. Just coming off the two wins to start off its career, and you'd mentioned with Zach being out, Avdullah has been able to pick up some really really nice mounts and has taken advantage of it, and I think this is the case here with this horse. Is uh, kind of amazingly is coming up in class. Um, and is still going to be the fourth highest weight on so like this is a horse that's gained a bunch of rating pretty quickly. uh is only going to be carrying 123 pounds, is still kind of drawn out wide, but you know Abdullah was able to kind of work a trip out the 11 post, so maybe can still work one out from the 9 post. I mean, it should be fine. I think it's going to be going against slightly tougher here. um and I think this is gonna be your favorite. It's gonna be a short price. So I'd rather take a shot with like maybe probably what's gonna be maybe your second or third choice in the one Invincible Shield, versus the four. But I'll have the four on my tickets. And then the three, Triumphant More. Um, maybe in every other type, but this is kind of interesting horse because this is a horse that's Uh, loves the distance. He's got 3 wins in 5 starts, going 1,200 meters. But has won at Happy Valley and then was able to carry that Happy Valley form over here to Shaw Tin, which not a lot of horses are able to do. Um, came up in class two back and was kind of flat. Um, but then was able to kind of win spring and upset last time at a nice price at 17 to 1. So maybe this is an every other type, and maybe this should be the fade. But my guess is that you're still going to get a pretty fair price on this horse. especially with the horses like the 1 and the 4 in here. And this is a horse that's definitely shown some ability. And what I really like is the horse that's shown versatility, right? Now it's drawn in the two post and uh, has shown to be able to sit just off the shoulder of a horse. Has one going wire to wire, and has one kind of sitting that tracking trip in fourth as well. So you know, I think Alexi Bedell is going to have some options here, depending on what other horses do with the good draw, and just the fact that he's got kind of a push button horse here. So yeah, I think that the three Triumphant More is definitely going to be in here with a pretty big shot. So those are the three horses I'm going to use. I'm going to use the one Invincible Shield as the lone A, and then I have Triumphant More and Magnifique as my B's. Where did you kind of land?
Yeah, just given my last race and kind of keying Master of My Universe, I figured I had to pick between Invincible Shield and Magnifique. And I kind of defaulted, I think, more towards Magnifique, just given the weight, right? If you look, you know, obviously both had wins last time. And to your point, right, Magnifique is moving up in class and is still the fourth highest weight, but is going off at 123 versus Invincible Shield, who's picking up, I think, 11 pounds up to, kind of the top rating in here. And I think that might be the difference, right? Y- you know, that was probably a more challenging race for Magnifique, granted against Class 3. Um, uh, but sorry, Invincible Shield, right? That was a more challenging race. Like I think that was an all-out effort versus Magnifique, who has kind of been drawn wide, and I don't think you've seen everything this horse has to give yet. Just it was kind of dusting horses in Class 4, right? So I do think this horse can run faster. I think given, kind of all that was stacked against it, I just don't know how good this horse is. I do agree with you. This horse probably will be favored, right? But to me, I couldn't put in a ticket where I'm using both Invincible Shield and Magnifique as, uses when I'm using Master by Universe in the last race, right? You kind of see those structures. You end up go to pick three that pays 15 to 1 or something like that coming out of that. It's just not, you either have to play that short or risk losing money, right? We've all had those pick three tickets here where, you put in $22 for a dollar ticket and you pay back 16, right? Like that's just not kind of, I think, the way to do it. So, yeah, I think I went with Magnifique over Invincible Shield, but I do agree with you that Invincible Shield could definitely win this race. The other horses I looked at the two Super Legends. I'm not gonna end up using that horse. I do feel like this horse has ability. I just don't trust Simeon yet. I don't know if he can win a race here. I'd like to see him actually physically win a race at Hong Kong before, kind of using the horse that he's on. And I do think he'll take a fair bit of money still. But yeah, I kind of looked at that one pretty hard, just given kind of the last, I think 2 and 3 back, he both won those races. And then I know he had the wide draw last time, but he has drawn wide again. So to me, that one I think was a fade. The only other horse that I wanted to bet in here that I think is interesting at a fairly, probably hopefully decent price was the 6 Super Infinity. Um, Something that I've never seen before here, or not never seen, but was a little bit odd to me. This horse, obviously, if you read the notes, came up lame after his last race, right? And so the last effort is clearly a toss, right? Like there's plenty of excuses as to why that horse, you know, performed poorly and, kind of basically got pulled up. Oddly, though, there was a note before that race that that horse was also lame, like coming off of its two back race. And I'm surprised that they let that horse run because it's odd that you would see a horse come up lame, pass a trial, and then come up lame again in a race. Hong Kong is really conservative with that stuff when it comes to that. So I do think before that all happened, this horse was steadily kind of on the improve, right? I do think you kind of see those figures moving up, and you see that this horse obviously has never finished worse than fourth before that last race. And so I do think there is a scenario where this horse kind of continued to improve, is back on the mend, is kind of back in form. Like I've said, I love layoffs here for that reason. You get a 3-month layoff here. That horse has to prove that, any sort of, physical abnormalities have been kicked since then. And given some of that form, I do think that there's an opportunity here for this horse to potentially show something that he hasn't shown before. And he doesn't need to improve that much to be kind of in the throes of this race. So I think he might fit. And I think you will get a price given some of those, those question marks, right? Especially with the other horses in this race. So I'll probably end up using Super Infinity as an A just from a structure perspective. Again, I don't know that he's the best horse in this race, but I do think there's potential for that horse to win. And if you get double digit price on that, that's always an opportunity that I want to take. So I'll be probably just using the 4 and the 6 in here and, understanding that, yeah, Invincible Shield could win this race, but even if I lose, structure wise, it just doesn't make sense for me to play that horse. So.
All right. And then race 10, the Designs on Rome Handicap, 1800-meter race. Where did you land here?
So this is an odd race to me because I think two things. One, there's a lot of speed in this race. And two, there's a lot of speed in this race that I've bet before. I think I've probably listed half the horses in this field as a pick of mine previously when it comes to this. And so that's a little bit awkward because I'm like, okay, well, I think these horses have ability. And I always get sketched out a little bit when I say, oh, I think this race is going to set up to melt, especially with horses that I like and have, kind of shown, okay, could potentially fit. Mostly because, we've all kind of been burned by that scenario where if one or two of those pace horses doesn't break well, that race scenario looks a lot different than you thought it would. And when that happens for horses up front, all of a sudden the complexion of that race is very different than you tried to handicap for. It's easier to handicap against a horse that's trying to come from the back, right? Because, hey, even if a pace horse breaks bad, he could still rush up and kind of, regain what you think is going to happen. If a, you know, if a pace duel, quote unquote, breaks bad, all of a sudden you don't have a pace duel anymore. And the closures that you bet because you think a race is going to set up a certain way don't come to fruition. And I do think that's kind of where, you may fall into a trap. So, horses like the 3 Pray for Mir, the 7 Packing Hurricane, the 8 Skyheart, the 9 Live and Let Live, I think are all horses that on paper could fit here, but I also think they're horses that will potentially duel each other out and set up for closers. So to me, I defaulted to, okay, who do I think are the best closers in this race? Who are the horses that I think are most likely to pass those horses if something burns out on the front end? And I kind of ended up in 3 spots with that, none of which I think are all that encouraging, but I'm going to go with it again based on trying to get paid off of kind of my previous opinions, which are pretty chalky. So I ended up on the 5 Lupo Satario, who is drawn out wide, but keep in mind this is 1800 on the A course, which is probably the fairest start you could ever get in Hong Kong, right? I think if you ever had a race where draw does not matter, it's this. You have the rails all the way in. You have a huge run up at 1800 as one turn. You have such a long time to get around that turn. And oh, by the way, if you don't, you still end up not losing too much ground. So if you wanted a race ever that's draw agnostic, it's this one. And so, plenty of time for this horse to slot in. Um, did I think fell last out? I think if you look to that race that was 4 back, or yeah, you see the F on there. Um, that was the race that I think ended up losing half the colony when this horse, ended up as one that kind of burned out. But I do think was progressing up until that happened. And so hopefully this horse is right. I think it was a victim of a different circumstance there, obviously. So yeah, I think, this horse was showing some ability, and I think, maybe even been one that I've used in that race previously. But yeah, I just think that this horse could potentially show something that, it hasn't. It is kind of hitting that 4th or 5th up race. I think it, has been progressing pretty well, and could run pretty well here. The other horses that I wanted to use, the 10 Winning Wing. I don't know how Cody Moe handles the 1800. He's actually, I don't think, ever ridden at 1800. I think this is his first race in a year at 1800. But he's going off at 113. And that's appealing to me. has kind of been bitten by the draw bug the last two out, but it's still steadily progressed, right? If you see horses kind of closing in when they're drawn out in the 12 post, that's something to me that's like, hey, maybe this horse can show something when it actually gets a decent draw and it moves in from the 12 down to the 4. So, there's potential there. You'll definitely get a price. Those have been competitive races as well. If you finish second and then you see horses, kind of coming back to win out of those races, I think this horse may have, something to show. So, jockey aside, there's potential there. And then the 12 solid win. I don't know if this horse wants extra distance or not. You can't really tell because I think the mile races are, yeah, about the same as the 1400 races. So who knows? But um, I think as a versatile type who can work a trip, I think, if the track is playing forward, right, you have those leaders that may burn themselves out. And if it defaults to the kind of that stalker who's going to just inherit a win, maybe this is the horse. So, um, TBD kind of where this one ends up. But, just one that if I'm looking for horses that, again, potentially are going to be passing, horses in the stretch off a hot pace, those are the three places I wanted to go. So I'll be kind of evenly through the 5 to 10 and the 12, just probably hoping to mostly catch a piece off of one of those. I don't think any of those will be favored in here. I think you'll probably get prices on all three. And so I'll probably use all of them equally. And maybe that's a way to get paid on this sequence, if, given the way I'm playing kind of the last two races. So,
Yeah, I saw. Well, I believe I'm contractually obligated to bet both the three Prey Premier and the eight Skyheart. You probably have that in your figures now. That both these horses make all my tickets at all
I
times.
don't, and I like those horses. I just think that, you put them all in the same race and they kind of end up battling each other. So
Yeah, yeah. Honestly, um, I really like the one, Senor Toba. Um, and this is a horse that has got 32 starts here in Hong Kong. He's only got 3 wins. Um, one of those wins here at this track at this distance, and he's got a third as well at this track at this distance. Um, Now you see a couple negatives, right? You see this is a horse that's literally gaining 16 pounds. Um, but I mean, you got to go pretty far back in this horse's PPs to find a race where he has a field like this. This is a horse that has never run in class 3, has been only running in class 2 and class 1. So yeah, this is as low as this horse has gone. And while this is a horse that's got a ton of weight added, some of the if you look at some of the figures that this horse I think has run in class 2, I think they match up really, really well with what he's up against in this spot. And yeah, I just think that this is a case of a horse finally dropping down in class enough to where I think he can be very competitive. I think, I don't know what kind of price you're going to get because obviously this is a horse that's been running in class 2 and class 1 races. Um, and I think everyone's going to see that class drop. Everyone's going to see some back races that think that fit. Sumion doesn't have a win yet, but he's a very very competent jockey. I mean more than competent. He's a very good jockey. But one who hasn't really run. He hasn't gotten a win yet. He's got 1/3 so far, but he is also a European based jockey, and they are just a little bit more used, I think, to running these stayer distances. Like, granted, this is a one turn, 1800 meters, but I don't know. I think the fact that he's on a kind of a more longer distance um, course in this case, um, I think maybe that kind of fits up and maybe plays into his strengths a little bit more. So I really like the one Senior Toba. It's gonna be my lone A in here, and then yeah, I'm gonna use the three Pray Premier and I'm gonna use the eight Skyheart, both as Bs. I think there's a chance that Skyheart ends up being your leader here. I think he's probably your fastest early. I'm just maybe a little concerned with like a horse like the 7 um, being drawn a little bit better. Drawing the 2 post, that maybe the 7 packing Hurricane gets kind of rushed up, and maybe, we've seen this before where, Hugh Bowman, everyone knows that he's on a pretty decent horse and he's going to be out kind of wide. Maybe a little gamesmanship, he gets floated a little bit, and kind of the same thing for the 3 Pray for Mir. I think Pray for Mir has run okay, kind of tracking, but I do think he's gonna, like I said, he's gonna have to kind of come across from the 12 post. You already kind of mentioned a little bit about how um, the post in 1800 meters isn't that big of a deal. And honestly, if you kind of go back through Pray for Mir's PPs, you see a horse named California Totality, who obviously we talked about briefly earlier in the Hong Kong Derby, right? As being the horse that kind of has his number, right? So I do think that he's kind of got he's run well against better. So I do think that he fits in here. But like I said, it's the 12 post is still kind of a tough post, even if it is 1800 meters. So I don't have him as an A. I have him as a B here, but I'm going to be the 1 Senior Topa as my lone A, and the 3 Pray for Mir, and the 8 Skyheart as my Bs. Anything else on this race?
I don't think so. No, I mean, I think you see it right where, the concern is not, hey, is that horse going to get the lead? The concern is, hey, is Matthew Chadwick going to just full send and burn that horse out? So
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think it's going to be an interesting race. I actually think this is a pretty interesting little late pick 3 sequence.
yeah,
Um, and yeah, I think the Derby is going to be a real interesting race as well. And that's going to do it for us here on You've Got to Be Shot to Me. Obviously, check us out at onthewronglead.com, at wrong_lead on Twitter. Matt is at Slow and Steady. He'll have his picks up on Twitter. I will probably be out of pocket for most of the weekend, but I'll try and maybe post something if I have some time Saturday night on some other thoughts I have on the cards. But yeah, have a good weekend, guys. Let's make some money, and hopefully, Matt and I can cash a college basketball bet
at some point.
See you guys.